All right, so we are picking up in the Imitation of Christ. We're on book 3, called The Interior Conversation, on a chapter called The Joys of the Next Life. And now we're starting on chapter 50. And this chapter is titled, How Persons Who Are Desolate Ought to Offer Themselves into the Hands of God. All right. Anybody felt desolate lately?
Sure.
Yeah, you definitely can get there. I think I felt that most profoundly in the 90s, before I was a Vedantist, when I was not religious at all. Yeah, I remember walking up. Had been out with my friends that night, getting into altered states, and I was walking up the hill to my apartment. And I just remember the thought occurring to me, this is not sustainable. I realized the amount of time and money that I was putting into my constant distraction, my constant stream of pleasures. It just occurred to me at that point. I was late 20s, old enough to where I was starting to realize that things age. And I was walking up that hill, and that it occurred to me that I can't live like this. This isn't going to work. And the desolation came because I had no answer. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what else to look at. And it was very similar. There was a series of those things that happened. I remember one night coming home in much the same situation and sitting on the edge of my bed and just being confronted with depression, sitting there thinking, God, I've done everything that I was supposed to do. I got my computer science degree because it was practical and I could get a good job. And now I've got that good job, and I've got my house, and I've got my car, and I've got my friends, and I've got this bedroom. And I was sitting there and I was just contemplating all the things that I had. And I realized I didn't have anything more than I had when I was in college. That my little, 10-inch black and white television was now a 37-inch Sony Trinitron, that my jam box was now a MB Quart, stereo system, 5-foot high speakers, and my one room off of a garage was now a house. My scooter was now a car. And I thought, God, if I just keep going this direction, things are just going to keep getting bigger. There's nothing else to have in this world. I mean, what do you have in this world? You've got food, you've got shelter. What else is there? And the rest of it is just quantity, right? I can get a bigger shelter. I eat more food. I take longer vacations. It's like that's your only choice. And of course the one of the what do they call? I forget all those words. That's an axiom, and then a theorem that you build on the axiom. One of the theorems based on that axiom, is that oh gosh, I've lost my train of thought now. I'm trying to think of those words. But just this notion that oh, that's where it was, that all of your desires are based on the combination of 5, right? You've only got 5 forms of input, 5 pieces of information: to taste, touch, smell, sound, whatever. All of your pleasures, all of your enjoyments are just a combination of those 5 things. You're never going to experience any more than 5 things. That's all you can get in this world, is a combination of 5 experiences, 5 pieces, your 5 senses. And you don't have to think very much about that before you realize, God, really, do I have to really go through every single possible combination of the 5 to realize they don't do anything for me? They don't last. They don't fill me, And so it's those kinds of thoughts that lead to renunciation. And they happen how? Through discernment, by being present in your body, by facing things that are sometimes hard to face, right? I remember that night that I was thinking everything had gotten bigger, but I didn't have any more. My end result of that night, I turned to myself. My name was Vance at that point in my life. And I turned to myself. It was very California granola nut moment, because I turned to myself and I said, Vance, I give you permission to do whatever you think you need to do to be happy. I give you permission. And I took that permission. 2 weeks later, I had gotten rid of the house. I'd gotten rid of all my furniture in 2 big giant garage sales, sold everything down, and had decided at that point, because at that point I had no idea what I wanted. So I was just trying different things. At that point, I was reading For Whom the Bell Tolls by Hemingway. And I had read a little bit about Hemingway, and I thought, well, that would be cool. I'll become a writer. I'll move to Prague, because I had read a Smithsonian article about how Prague was the new hotspot for American expats. And so 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a cafe in Prague writing my new novel.
Hemingway lived in Key Largo.
Well, he lived in Paris too, I think, but I went for Prague because the Smithsonian recommended it. But this is the thing. I look at my life. It's. I mean, of course, I think everybody says this, but I sit in front of you right now with these orange robes on a shrine. Teaching. There's a time in my life where you could not have come up with an odder idea for me than this. That I would, the first time it hit me was when I was standing in DC, standing in front of the auditorium in an orange dress in my robes. And I just third partied myself for a moment. I just saw myself from a third party perspective. And I was like, what in the world has happened to you? What? You are standing in front of a room of people in an orange dress talking about spiritual life. What is up with this? But this is the thing. I find it very encouraging, because pay attention to your life, and you'll never know where it's going to go. 5 days before I became a monk, if you had asked me to write a list of the top 100 things that I was going to do in my life, being a Hindu monastic was not on that list. 5 days before I became a monk. 5 days, and that wasn't in my top 100 possibilities of where my life was going to go. So when you're feeling depressed, when you're feeling stuck, when you feel like life isn't giving what you want, just think 5 days from now, you could be doing something that has not even occurred to you, involved in an adventure that's going to last the rest of your life. So be wary. So then the other thing that comes along with that is I caution people about their practice because when I 5 days later did take my initiation and consequently joined the order, my teacher at that time, Pravajika Moksha Prana, she told me, okay, now you should meditate twice a day, 3 times if you can, but at least twice a day. And you should pick a time and a duration that you can do and never miss. And she told me it doesn't matter how short it is. It doesn't matter how long it is. Just be sure that you pick a time and a duration that you can do every day. So I was very honest. And I decided twice a day for 2 minutes. I thought that's about what I can guarantee. I can do twice a day for 2 minutes. And so I started my practice in my first 6 months. I did twice a day, 2 minutes. I sat down at the shrine. At that point, my shrine had just a bunch of stuff on it. I don't even think there were any particular, oh no, actually on that shrine there was, Thakur was there. Finally, it started out with purple hippos and stones and sticks and stuff, and then eventually became Thakur, Ma, and Swamiji, and now Jesus and Buddha, and all of that. But be careful, because my commitment to 2 minutes twice a day put me in an orange dress in a monastery. So there's no guarantees. You be careful what you decide to do. Because if you give mother, that's the thing, I give mother 1 toe's width worth of space in your life.
Why?
And she'll own you.
Debbie, you have school tomorrow.
Oops, just a moment. Let me help this person out. Okay. There we go. We don't have to deal with that. All right. Chapter 50. How persons who are desolate ought to offer themselves into the hands of God. And so a disciple is speaking, praying right now. Lord God, most holy Father, be you blessed now and forever. As you will, so has it been done. What you do is always for the best. Let your servant rejoice in you, not in myself or any other, but in you. For you alone are my true happiness. You are my hope and my crown. Lord, you are my joy and my honor. And he goes on, what do I possess, O Lord, that I have not received from you, and that without any merit of my own? All things are yours, both what you have given and what you have made. Since infancy, I have been wretched and close to death. Often my heart is so sad that I am moved to tears, and sometimes my soul is so disturbed within itself because of the many passions that come from the world and the flesh. So he's going on with a very beautiful, very honest prayer here. And it's a very real situation. And the beautiful thing here is that he has come to know, at least in part of himself, if not his entire self, that you are my source of rejoicing. Rejoicing is little religious words. You're the source of my happiness. You're the source of my contentment. And this is why we practice, right? Because we have to practice and understand that that is true for us. Why do we have to practice to understand that? Because we have broken God into thousands of little pieces, and we've hidden those pieces in all of these objects in the world, and every now and then they glitter, right? Every now and then that quality of the divine glitters in those objects, and we forgot that we hid a piece of God in there. And so we go running after the object instead of realizing it's just reflecting. Reflecting what? Reflecting my own nature. We started that last class just a few minutes ago with that idea, that our desires are born of our nature, our true nature, Satchitananda, right? But we're in the world of the finite. And so we try and recreate our image in the finite world, right? We try to find an infinite love. We try to find an infinite power. We try to find and infinite pleasure, right? To replace the bliss that we have forgotten, to replace the ananda that we've left behind, to replace the immortality that we've assumed was not true, to take the place of all of these things. And so that's where our desires are born. When we take ourselves to be this bundle of limitations and restrictions, and then try and recreate our real nature in a finite world. And we can't do it. And so he says, let your servant rejoice in you. Let me find my contentment within myself, right? Anything that you have to go outside of yourself for makes you a slave. This is one of the very interesting things that happens through attachment. Through attachment, we forget, or we think that the body is ourself. We think that the mind is ourself. And so we think that when I go and choose my favorite food, that I'm serving myself, right? But you're not the body, and you're not the mind. You're not serving yourself. You're serving something outside of yourself, right? So you're beholden to your body. You're beholden to your body, and look at how much effort your body was for you today. How many things did you have to do? How much of your money today went to serving your body? How much of your time was spent, cajoling your mind, feeding your body, washing your body, resting your body, right? And as long as we live under the delusion that I am the body and I am the mind, we don't notice that we're slaves. We think that we're enjoying ourselves. We don't understand why we're exhausted. We don't understand why we're not fulfilled. We don't understand, why we're unhappy, why we're depressed, right? So his prayer here, let your servant rejoice in you. Let me find that I am everything that I need, that I'm enough. Let me understand that I'm not the hungers of the body, that I can withdraw my mind in the body and not feel that hunger anymore. And yes, the body will drop off, but that also will be as inconsequential as my hunger was, right? In the truth of things, that's a daring statement, but in the truth of things, it's true. And so he's just praying, let your servant rejoice in you, not in myself, right? My ego self. Whenever the Christians talk about self or talk about nature, they're talking about the ego identified self. They start with that. The Vedantists, we always start with the pre-fall Adam, Adam before he made a mistake, right? And the reason we do that is because that way we know our nature. Our nature is divine, Satchitananda, right? That's why the Christians in other places in this book, you see that when you take the perspective that I'm the fallen Adam, then you're wretched. You know, they use that word all the time, wretched as I am, lowly as I am, you know, all of these horrible negative things, which are all true of the ego self. The ego self is wretched. Your imagined self is horribly hungry, always in pain, always needing something, right? But it's not what you are. It's not what you are. You alone are my true happiness. Have you discerned enough to see the truth in that? Or do you still believe your happiness is in a chemical or in an experience or in a person, right? Something outside of yourself. You are my hope and my crown. You are my joy and my honor, right? And all of this happens through discernment. Doesn't happen, well, it can be imagination, you know, just like this building was imagination, right? So it's like everything enters this world through imagination. So there's nothing wrong with imagining God. If that's where you're at and that's how things are, imagine God. But ultimately, that imagining will create a space for that reality to manifest itself, to betray itself to you. You know, sit there and have a conversation with God, and it will all seem very imaginative, very much imagination. Oh, I've got a pretend friend. I've got an imaginary friend. But one day, that imaginary friend will say something that wasn't in your mind, will teach you something that you didn't know. And if you're paying attention, you'll be like, what was that? How did that happen? Right? And then little by little, you know, you sit there trying to picture your chosen ideal in your mind. You just try and try for years, maybe. Oh, I just can't do it. I just don't have imagination. And one day you'll be sitting there trying it, and for a split second that you're not even sure even happened, you'll see the face of your beloved so clear, more clear than if your eyes had seen him sitting in front of you. But it'll happen so fast. You're like, what in the world was that? And you know it wasn't imagination, because no imagination has ever been that real, that resolution all at once, everywhere at once, you know. And so, yes, initially it's imagination. Yes, initially it's just a phrase or a mantra that you're repeating. Yes, initially it does look like just an imaginary friend for a 3-year-old. Stick with it. Stick with it, because the covering will undo itself. And that which was imagination will be a place for you to sit down and give a lecture at some point. That place which was imagination will be real. He says, what do I possess, O Lord, that I have not received from you? So what's he doing now? Now he's showing the discernment that he went through to know that God was his happiness, that God is his source of his hope, the source of his pleasure, the source of his enjoyment. What do I possess, O Lord, that I have not received from you, and that without any merit of my own? All things are yours, both what you have given and what you have made. Right? Often my heart is so sad that I am moved to tears, and sometimes my soul is disturbed within itself because of the many passions that come from the world and from the flesh. Because what do, those passions? They pull you out of your center, right? You see, the thing about your nature, that Satchitananda within you, is that it's perfectly in harmony. It's perfectly balanced. There is no desire there. There's no movement there. There's no disturbance there. There's no change there. It's absolute peace, the peace that passes understanding, which means it's the peace that's inherent to you before mind, before your personality, before all of that. It's what you are, right? And so to sit in that place is to be content. It's to need nothing, to be completely unperturbable. All is well with my soul, right? As that old song goes. But once your passions, what is the passions? What happen? How do you get when you what do? It's the threefold process of Eve that we just talked about. You know what happens? Your senses grab your attention. They show you something beautiful, and they pull you toward it. You notice it. Now, if you look at that thing, and you've learned that you look through things, you don't look at things, because these things are all dream articles. They're all created as symbols by your mind. Everything that you're experiencing through your senses is only a symbol presented to you, the witness, by your mind. You've never seen any of these objects, if they exist at all, anywhere. You've only seen their symbols. And if you've discerned that that symbol is not the thing that's beautiful, that it is the divine behind it that is giving it beauty. When you look at your lover and you say, it's not my lover, it's not that body mind that I love. It's the divine within that body mind that's able to show me love, that's able to show me compassion, that's able to reflect back to me the feelings I have for them. You come to know the nature of that relationship, and that it's not physical, that it's spiritual in nature. And when we come to know those things, then we don't get pulled out of our center. Until then, you get pulled out of your center. All of your desires require work. None of them are natural to you. Every one of your desires requires you to lather it somehow. You have to feed it and engage into it and put quite a bit of energy into making it happen. It's not native. You have to work at being unnaturally attracted to these things and going and getting them. Right? If they were natural to you, you wouldn't have to do that. You wouldn't have to invest that amount of effort to fulfill every one of your desires. And so don't. If you realize that something is requiring more and more action on your part in order to attain or get or have or enjoy, cut it off. Say, look, wait, whoa. Let's back down to this moment here where I'm just sitting calmly in this moment. And remove from this moment, right? What we were talking about, don't let the not here, not now, infect your here and now, right? Don't be thinking about Ukraine. It's not here and it's not now. So don't let it disturb your peace. Bring your awareness to the moment, to this, to here, and to now. And keep limiting what you allow to come into the here and now to be only what's here and what's now. Your boss is not here. Your wife is not here. Your kids are not here. Your debt is not here. All of the things that you've been concerned and worried about, they are not here and they are not now. Right now, for us, we're sitting in a temple. Lovely paintings, lovely pictures, right? None of the things there's nothing here that could disturb us. Nothing. Everything is at peace. Everything is where it should be. Everything's paid for. So be in that. Be here and be now. And let whatever is in front of you be the thing that you are occupied with. And that's one of the ways that we are able to stay in the shrine of the heart. Not letting the not here, not now pull us out of the here and now, which is not here and now, but is here and now. Right? Because you're not watching a room out there. You're watching the symbols of your mind. And where are you watching that from? Not from your eyes, but from your mind's eye within you. Where are you? You're in the shrine of the heart. And what are you looking at? The beloved in all of her myriad of forms. Right? So stay in the here and the now and keep out the not here, not now, so that your soul is not disturbed with itself because of your passions that come from this world and from the flesh, from all of these sensations that you've given stories to, each one of them, and named each one of them, and become intimately acquainted with each one of them. Lord, how I long for the joy of inward peace, right? How I long for that. Well, how do you find that? By accepting it. You have to accept that your inner peace is real, that it's there. You have to stop the story that's leading you elsewhere. You have to stop the ideas that are pulling you out of yourself and telling you there's something out there that's going to be beautiful, going to be good for food, and going to make you whole, right? Just to remind you of the three-step fall of Adam and Eve in the garden. It's a looping story. That story is not the beginning of humanity, like it's often misunderstood to be. It's a looping story that describes the moment. You are in the Garden of Eden. Your inner self is content and with the beloved in an intimate embrace with the divine. That's what's going on inside of you in reality. Why aren't you experiencing it? Because you've been distracted. You've been pulled into the senses. You've been tricked into thinking that there's something out there that's going to give you something. And why can't you find your inner peace? Because you don't know where it is. Why? Because it's silent. It's absolutely still. It's absolute harmony. There's nothing there to call you back. There's no noise there to tell you where it is. That's why it can only be found through neti, right? Because there's nothing in front of your senses to take you there. You have to do it by backing into it. Nope, it's not that thing out there. Nope, it's not that sensation there. Nope, it's not that thought. Nope, it's not that story. And you keep saying no enough times, and suddenly you bump into your inner peace. Like, like that, right? He says, Lord, how I long for the joy of inward peace, that peace enjoyed by your chosen children who are nourished by you in the light of your consolation. O Lord, if you infuse your peace and holy joy, my soul shall be full of melody and sing your praises. Right? Because where is God? Right? God is in the drawing room of the heart. Ramakrishna says, the heart is the drawing room where God meets his devotees. So you go to your drawing room, you start playing cards with God. Just be in there, in that presence, right? Feel that love. How do you find that love? How do you know that your nature is love? Right? Well, think of something you love deeply, someone that you love deeply, and then stop thinking about them and put your focus on the feeling, quote, of love. And feel it. Where is it? It's always coming from the shrine. It's always coming from here. It's not coming from out there. The external world is always incidental to the inner reality. So let that knowledge of love lead you to love. When you say your mantra and you're thinking of love, you're thinking of God's love, and you feel that inside, follow the mantra, right? When the mantra becomes something that happens automatically that you don't have to sit there and focus on, you can set it running. Once it's running, start walking around it in your mind. Where's it coming from? If the mantra and God are one and the same, then the mantra has to lead you to the shrine. Starts finding out, where is that mantra coming from? Where is that sound initiating from? O Lord, if you infuse your peace and holy joy, my soul shall be full of melody and sing your praises. But if you withdraw from me, as you must often do, I will be unable to follow in the way of your commandments, but rather on bended knees I shall beat my breast, because things are not the same with me now as they were before, when your lamp shone over my head and the shadow of your wings protected me from the temptations which assailed me. Right? And so here he's kind of reversing. We do this quite a bit, partly because it takes the responsibility off of ourselves. If God withdraws from me, what can I do? Please come back. Please come back. That's all I can do is call out, come back, come back. But when you realize it's impossible for God to leave you, why? Because he's everywhere present. Where is he going to go? I tease him about that all the time. I was like, you may not like me. You may not like what I'm thinking or doing. Where are you going to go? You can't leave me, right? We're together in this forever. You're stuck with me by your own design, by your own choice. And so you accept that and you remember that, right? And then it's your responsibility. And then you realize, God has not left me. I don't have to run after him as a beggar. I'm his heir. I'm his child, her child. I don't have to go looking. I have to accept that he's present and take my eyes off of the things that led me away from that remembrance. Take my eyes off of the world and off of the flesh so that I can find my way back to my shrine. Right. O just Father, holy and ever to be praised, the hour has come for your servant to be tested. It is truly fitting that I should suffer something for you. Okay, this is this falls into that the Christian narrative a little bit. There's this idea, that Jesus suffered on the cross to forgive you of your sins, that you might be united with the Father, right? It was a way of manifesting grace for you for doing that. And so from that came this very Christian narrative of participating in that suffering, right? Identifying with the Christ who suffered everything for you, and in that building intimacy and building love of God. And so that's where he's coming from when he talks of in this way. Right. Most honored Father, you foresaw from all eternity that for a short time I would be outwardly oppressed, being despised as little in the eyes of the world, but living interiorly always for you, so that I might rise again from my afflictions, sufferings, and weaknesses in the dawn of a new light, and be glorified in heaven with you, right? And that's basically just describing that return to our knowledge of self. That glorification is dropping of the ego, all of our guilt and story of shortcoming, of separation, of smallness falls away, right? It's what happens when you look at Eve in the garden, what happened to her and to Adam after they ate that fruit of egoism, after they imbibed egoism. Well, the very first thing that happened is that they realized they were naked. They became body conscious, right? They defined themselves by their body. Oh, we're naked. So what did they do? They ran and hid and tried to find some leaves to cover their bits with, right? So they ran, and so now they're hiding in the woods, covering their bits with leaves, and they hear God walking in the cool of the day. Love itself, walking in the cool of the day in paradise. And what was their response after having gone into their senses? They were afraid. They hid from love itself. They hid, right? They weren't sure. And God comes to them, he finds them, he says, oh, why did you hide? Why did you guys meet me? Oh, and of course, then, Adam is blaming Eve. Well, she ate that fruit that you forbade, and then Eve's like, oh, well, that serpent, that is the serpent's fault. The serpent did it, Again, it's everybody else's fault. It's not my doing. I'm not the one responsible, right? And God says, oh, have you eaten of the fruit I told you not to eat of? He said, oh, man, do you know what you've done? You've stepped into your senses to identify yourself. You're going to be hungry for the rest of your days. You're going to be hungry. Your desires are going to call you constantly. And you're never going to be able to fulfill them, right? He says you're going to have to leave paradise because you already have, right? You've already stepped out of the inner shrine. You've stepped out of your perfection. And you've stepped into the world of the senses and you believed them. And you thought that they would make you like me. You thought that they would fulfill you. You thought that they would create something that you needed. But they won't. And they don't. He says, and so I'm going to put a guard here at the gate to the garden with a flaming sword, right? That cherubim with the flaming sword to make sure that you don't get back into the garden. Why? Because there's one more tree in that garden. Anybody remember what the other tree is? I always ask, just for fun. The other tree is the tree of immortality. You're not allowed back into the garden to eat of that tree of immortality until what? Until you defeat the cherubim with the flaming sword of desire at the gate. So overcome your desire. He's telling Eve, go back and initiate, look very closely at what happened, that 3-step process when you looked at the tree of egoism, your attachment to it, the promises that it made to you, and you're believing them. Go and reconsider that. Conquer this desire that you've gained by stepping into your senses. Conquer that desire, and then you can come back to the garden. And when you come back to the garden that time, having conquered desire, then you can eat of the tree of immortality. You can know of your immortal nature. And why doesn't he just give it to them? Because that would make the curse immortal, right? It would make their hunger immortal. If you let them in the garden without defeating their desires to eat of the tree of immortality, then their lost condition would be forever. But as it is, he gives you the chance and grace to overcome the mistakes, to beat that angel, that cherubim with the flame of desire, to return to the garden and feast. So that I might rise again from my afflictions, from my sufferings, from my weaknesses, in the dawn of a new light, and be glorified in heaven with you, the return to the garden, the return to paradise. Holy Father, you have appointed it so, and willed it so, and that which you have ordained has come to pass. Indeed, this is the way that you show favor to your friends. You permit them to suffer and meet with trials in this world, to prove their love for you, to give you something to give back, right? This is where my favorite story about buying my father that Father's Day gift, right? I remember of 13, I guess I was 13. I don't know how old I was, 8, 13, somewhere like that. Mother gave me $10 to buy my dad a Father's Day gift. So I go down to the PX at the base, and I'm walking around looking for something to get my dad. And while I'm walking there looking at Snoopy statues, thinking that's what he wants, I'm wondering to myself, why in the world doesn't dad just come down and get himself what he wants? What's the point of this? It's his money and it's his gift. Why doesn't he just come get what he wants? And that way he doesn't have to be disappointed in my Snoopy statue, right? And of course, you know the reason why, because he gives you that $10. What do you do with that $10? You don't just go buy a gift. You apply your love to that $10. And you go out and you find a token of that love by showing your father you know what he likes. You think what you want to give something pleasant to him, something pleasing to him, something that says something about your relationship to him. So you take something that belongs to your father and you turn it into something of love of your own, and you give it back to him. That's what this world is all about. You know, everything here is the beloved's. None of it is yours. So what do you do with it? You take it, you apply Satchitananda to it, you make something beautiful, you make something holy, you make something sweet, and you offer it back, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And at the end of your life, you realized, wow, what a fulfilling and beautiful life I had. But it was always a byproduct of being true to your nature. It was never something you pursued. Pursue a fulfilling life and you'll never have one. Pursue your nature and you will have nothing but that fulfillment, right? So make sure that everything that you are interested in and doing in your life is applying that infinite love that is you, applying that infinite wisdom that is you, and presenting it through your being as an offering in the moment back to your beloved friend. Holy Father, you have so appointed it and willed it so, so that which you have ordained has come to pass. Indeed, this is the way that you show favor to your friends. You permit them to suffer and to meet with trials in this world, and to buy their Father's Day gift for you and to give it to you. How often and by whom you permit this to happen is all determined by your divine providence. All is governed by your laws, and nothing happens by chance. It was a blessing for me to be afflicted, so that I might learn your decrees, and to cast away all of my pride and my presumption. It is good for me to have known disgrace, that I might learn from it to look for help and assistance from you rather than from human beings. I have also learned to fear your unsearchable judgments, for you afflict the good person as well as the wicked, but not without equity and justice. I thank you, O Heavenly Father, that you have not spared my sins, that your rod of correction has taught me by inflicting pain and by sending afflictions both within and without, right? Without that, we would never know ignorance. We would never be able to figure out our ignorance.
So is it true that the Father sends these sufferings, whether it's mental or physical, so that we learn to surrender?
No, and yes. You see, when the truth of the matter is one without a second, right? When the truth of the matter that all is God and nothing else exists, then we come to know that all the rest of this is story. But some of those stories will lead you back to your home, will lead you back to truth. So in the context of it being a story, yes, it's true that God inflicts these things for whatever reason in order to bring us home. But that's story because we live in a story. We create story and we live through story. That's how egoism happens and how it carries on. So God allows himself to become a story because in reality, there's only this moment. There's no room for a story in the moment. And their life is not on a line. There is no past. That's purely a concept of mind. There's no future. That also is purely a projection of mind. The only thing we've ever experienced is now. That's all there is. Right? And so that's the ultimate truth. But we have to, we still have the idea of story. We still have the idea of past, present, and future in there. And so God presents himself through those idioms of mind, through those tools of mind, allows himself to be partially misunderstood so that he can belong to the past, the present, and the future. And so in that, he afflicts you when you break his commandments. Or the Vedantic way of saying is, it hurts when you don't live according to your nature. If you violate your nature, you suffer. Or you can break your nature out into God and say, when you violate God, you suffer. When you disobey God, you suffer. But ultimately, it's because God created you around the image of himself, the image of God that's within you. And so your contentment in life is not a storyline thing. It's not a this, and a that to get you there. It's being present and being in harmony with what you know to be your nature. And that is what creates a fulfilling life. It's not a story or an attainment or a goal or a reaching. It doesn't take that. It's simply being present in this moment, taking what this moment gives to you, applying your nature to it, making it beautiful, and offering it back to a person by offering to God that's in that person, to yourself, to the shrine, to whatever it is. And that's the meaning of life. The meaning of life is not an attainment. It's a taking the moment and releasing it over and over and over again through your love, through your wisdom, through your being. So it's moment to moment. It's not a line, it's a point. It was a blessing for me to be afflicted so that I might learn your decrees and cast away all pride and presumption, right? Which is all egoism is. And that's the challenge of egoism. It's only by grace that we reach the divine. And Mother says her grace is infinite and available to us. But that old understanding that we've shared many times. To accept infinite grace requires infinite humility. So as long as there's any part of you that thinks you can do it by yourself, if there's any part of you that thinks you own something of God's in this world, until that is gone, you cannot accept grace. You won't accept it because you have to have that infinite humility. You have to have that understanding. Now, all the way down at the core, there's nothing that is mine, and there's nothing that I can do. And when you're okay with that, when you can sit in front of the beloved and feel nothing but love in the light of your greatest weakness, then grace comes, freedom comes. It is good for me to have known disgrace. Why? Because that's how ego is broken, right? Disgrace is a wound to the ego, that I may learn from it to look for help and assistance from you rather than from the world, from human beings. I have also learned to fear your unsearchable judgments, right? To be concerned about my nature, sussing out who I am so that I can live in accordance and harmony with it. to know that, no, I'm not a sexual being. No, I'm not an American. No, I'm not a Jew. No, I'm not gay. No, I'm not straight. No, I'm not transgender. No, I'm not male. No, I'm not female. I am all of it and more, right? I am all of it and more. I've learned to fear your unsearchable judgments, to find out who I am. For you afflict the good person as well as the wicked, but not without equity and justice, right? Everything is motivated by love. And that's a very important piece to remember when you're trying to see every moment as perfect, right? You have to know that every moment is born of love. And so that means you have to search within yourself and realize that everything you have ever done has been for love, right? All of your desires that you fulfilled were because you loved them, you wanted them, and in ignorance you ran after them. And then through discernment, right, Mother says that you can realize God when you have combined love of a chaste woman for her husband, as a woman for her paramour, as a child for its mother, as a rich man for his money. How do you do that? You don't have to create any of that love. What you have to do is go back to what we said and understand that everything that you desire out there is God. If you sit there, that's what discernment is. When you see something that's desirable and beautiful out there, discern until you see the name of God in it that is attracting you. The one that Ramakrishna talks about, that gross one. That's kind of fun if I'm in a room full of teenagers. But he says, what's in a woman's body? He's talking to a bunch of young men. He says, there's nothing but bone and gristle and fat and pus, right? It's like, is that what you want? He's teaching you how to discern, right? And I tried that. I remember early on when I joined the monastery, I was walking down the street. There was this beautiful person on the other side of the street walking along. And I felt that lust inside. I felt that desire, for that person. And so I thought about that. I asked myself, I was in mind, what are you doing? What do you want? You can have it. Tell you what, you can have it. Tell me what it is you want. Is it a body part? Here's a knife. Go cut off any body part you want. It's all yours. And what do you feel? Of course, you recoil. Hopefully. No, that's not going to do it. Oh, it's not a body part. You want the whole body. All right, well, let's kill them. There's the whole body. Go take the whole body. It's all yours. And again, what do you feel? Ugh. Well, what is it you desire? You've got the whole body. You can have the part of the body. That's all you've seen. That's all that's presented to you. What is this desire inside? Well, obviously it's for what lives in that body. Because when you take that out of that body becomes gross. It becomes very unattractive. It's not what you want. So see how quickly you can arrive at that. It's like, clearly it's the divine in that body, the divine presence that I'm attracted to in that person. Look at a mountain. Think about what is beautiful there. It's just snow and some stones and some dead trees, right? What is that beauty? What is beauty? How do you always know what beauty is, right? Did you take a class? Did somebody teach you what is beautiful? Then how is it that you know what is beautiful? Because you are beauty itself. You know your reflection when you see it. You just make the mistake of thinking it belongs to the mountain instead of to you. But that mountain isn't beautiful in itself. That mountain is only beautiful to you. And what are you? You are the beauty of all things. You're the wisdom of all things. You're the love of all things. And so by discerning like that, you gather all of your love, all those loves that Mother talks about, and they flow to the Lord because you realize, wow, in all of those things I desired, it was always the name of God that attracted me. I have discerned that and recognized that, and I can't be fooled anymore. And where is that God? He's not out there. He's here. And you learn to go inside, to find that silence, to find that space where you can know God when nothing is telling you about God. When you are sitting there knowing in absolute perfect communion, right? Are we over time? No, early. I am in your hands, O most loving of fathers. Strike me where you will, that I may bend my perversity to your will. Make me a humble and pious pupil, that I may walk according to your direction. I offer myself and all that is mine for your correction, for it is better to be punished here than in the world to come. You know all, and no one's conscience is hidden from your eyes. You know the future before it happens, and there is no need for anyone to tell you what is happening on earth. You know what is needful for my progress and how to make use of trials to remove me from the rust of sin. Therefore, do with me as you will, and despise not my sinful life, known to no one better or more clearly than to you alone. Right? And so really, what's he doing here? Surrendering, right? Surrendering. I'll accept anything that brings, knowing that it's from you and knowing that its purpose is to teach me and to give me back to yourself, right? So you're willing to endure, you're willing to suffer, you're willing to take whatever life brings you in order to reach that goal. Grant me, O Lord, to know what I ought to know, to love what I ought to love, to esteem what is valuable to you, and to loathe what is vile in your eyes. Why? Because God is love itself. He's not loving, he is love. He doesn't exist, he is existence. He isn't wise, he is wisdom itself, right? And so to say, let me love what I ought to love. What's he asking for? Let me love you. Let me love love for its own sake. Let me love wisdom. Let me enjoy your being. Matters both visible and spiritual are to be determined with right judgment, and above all, let me ever seek your goodwill and pleasure. Why? Because God's goodwill and pleasure is your goodwill and pleasure when your mind is pure. When you've removed the ideas of me and mine, a separate me and a separate mind from God, then your will and God's will become the same. God's will has always been your ideal. But because of your impure seeing, the lenses of your attachments have prevented you from recognizing that. People's senses often lead them to make wrong decisions and erroneous judgments. The lovers of this world are deceived and love only what they see. How is a person any better by being thought so by another? For one deceitful person deceives another. The blind mislead the blind, and the weak mislead the weak. Certain it is that persons often confuse others whom they vainly praise. Said the humble Saint Francis, whatever persons are worth in the sight of God, that they are, and no more. Right? So it's understanding. It's just dragging into duality all of these things that Advaita indicates. That oneness with the beloved. There's nothing out there to get. There's nothing to run after. Understand that this delusion of external things is a play of mind and a forgetfulness of self. Right? And so understand that everything in this world is pointing at God. So stop looking at the finger. Start looking at what it's pointing at. The beauty of the mountain is in you. The love of your girlfriend or your boyfriend is in you. Your mother and father are within you. You need nothing external because there is nothing external. You live in a mind, a world of symbols. And what are they symbols of? Satchitananda. So see the reflection and turn to the self. All right. We'll stop there.